Hello, and welcome to the Divorced Dadvocate, divorce support for dads, where we help dads create a healthy and less traumatic divorce. My name is Jude Sandoval, and I'm your host. I created this podcast in the Divorced Advocate community as a result of my own high conflict divorce, and because you as a dad deserve all the resources necessary to thrive through this challenging time. I encourage you to check out our website at thedivorcedadvocate.com, where there are resources that correspond to this episode, as well as free access to our membership community, where you will find live meetings, free workshops and courses, private discussion groups, and more. And now, on to this week's episode.
Hello and welcome. I appreciate that you are here today, and our topic is affectionately called training a puppy. But what we're going to be specifically talking about today is how to change the relational dynamic with your ex. And I came up with that kind of funny and silly title, talking to my girlfriend this morning in sharing kind of ideas and ways in which we're both respectively working on and trying to understand ways in which we can improve and have a better relationship with our ex. But really, I joke oftentimes with her about really what we're doing, because we as people have taken the time individually to do the work that we need to and continue to do. That is that we're continually changing, which is oftentimes confusing for other people, particularly our exes who are in intimate relationships with us for such a long period of time. And if any of you know what I'm talking about, at least maybe not specifically right now in your breakup or in your romantic relationship, but maybe in another relationship where it was a friendship that kind of grew. You may have grown to do different things. I talk about this with my daughters quite often because they are old enough now to have gone through different friends and have different stages of their lives in junior high and high school, et cetera, where they've had friends that have come into their lives for a while, and then they have had friends that have left their lives for a while. They have had some that have come in and that have stayed and have remained good friends for a while. But the point being is, depending upon the time in your life and the circumstances around your life and the growth that you have, it has an impact on what your relationship is like. And oftentimes people, when you are evolving or changing, are going to grow away from you. But the fortunate or unfortunate, depending on how you're looking at it, reality is when we get divorced, that we're not ever going to be free or separate from our exes, because we have the kiddos that are always going to remain a constant that we're going to have, that we're going to be tied to. So in having to in growing and making those changes, comes a component of how we're going to pretty much kind of retrain our exes to know and understand the new person that we may be or be evolving into. And so that's how why I kind of affectionately call it training a puppy, because we're literally starting over, which can be a confusing thing for our exes, because they're used to, depending on how long you were married, they're used to the person that you were in the marriage. And so when that starts to change and the dynamics starts to change and you start doing things differently post-divorce, then that becomes a really difficult and challenging thing for them, and confusing often as well, particularly if they're not doing any work themselves and they're not trying to learn, evolve, and become better or adapt to your relationship or any other relationships around them, which maybe a few of you can relate to, right? I know that I can for sure. That the exes are not, or at least not willingly, wanting to make those changes and evolve into a hopefully better and healthier mindset. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through 10 ways to retrain your puppy, or train your puppy, or retrain your ex, if you will, however you want to call it. You're going to notice that there's kind of in two sections. One is the first half of that is more focused on yourself and getting clear about things and what you can do. Really, all you can do is stay in your own lane and do what you need to do. But there are then at the end, we're going to talk about action steps and ways that you go about and implement what it is that that you've done the work around in order then to try to get the intentions or results that you're really looking for, that you really need for yourself. But also this is going to positively impact the kiddos most definitely. So the first one we're gonna mention is to get clear on what the situation is. And so what do I mean by getting clear on what the situation is? When we're going through this or when we're just post-divorce, oftentimes we just might not be clear, but the other part of that might be is that we're just not accepting of what the situation is and what that looks like. Part of this is going through that grieving process and learning and understanding what your feelings are around the new dynamic, or what your life 2.0 or whatever you want to call it. So getting clear on that. And so some ways that you can do that, one would be get into therapy. It is an incredibly useful and helpful thing to do. And they can, a good therapist is going to help you really sort out and be clear on what the situation is. So you're not deluding yourself into what might be or what could have been or whatever you might be having going through your head. If you don't, and as always, and I always want to, I always say therapy plus coaching is probably the best case scenario. So you can do that in coaching, or you can do that in addition with coaching, as well as getting clear on what the situation is. I love the coaching because the coach is going to be able to be very straightforward with you about a situation and pointing things out. Not that therapists can't be. A good therapist is going to be able to find ways to do that, but they have to work within some certain constraints and allow you the leeway to work through and come to that understanding and knowing about that. But either way, coaching, therapy is both good. If you don't have the if you don't have the means to get into therapy or coaching, and again, this is a review for those of you who listen very often, but journaling is a great way to start to get clear on what a situation is. That's some self-therapy, if you will, or some self-help around that, but also getting in some sort of support group as well, where you're able to talk things out. You'll be surprised and amazed that by verbalizing things, how much you're able to clarify. We're just designed that way naturally to be with our language, to be able to figure things out and work through things through the simple process of communication. And so that's why being in relation with people is incredibly, incredibly important, particularly during this challenging time of divorce or post-divorce. Don't isolate, don't self-isolate, don't try to stick it out and go it alone. Being together with somebody, being able to communicate, talk things through is incredibly important. So get clear on what the situation is, and accepting of the situation is the next one that we're going to talk about. So getting clear on it and accepting it are two completely different things. Accepting it is just knowing what it is and accepting it. It doesn't mean that you have to be happy about what it is. And this may be, again, just a season in your life of what it is, but accepting the situation is going to be incredibly important, particularly when we get to the second half, or the second 5 steps around this of what you're going to do and actually do to create this change, and how to train the other person to know and understand what the new you is, and what the dynamic is that you want to see in the new relationship that you have with them. So accepting the situation, and this may take some time. And these first 2 steps may take a whole lot of time in really taking a step back and looking and analyzing and understanding what the situation is and where you're at in that situation. And then that second part is acceptance. And acceptance is one of the parts of grieving. So you're going to find that probably oftentimes these first two parts, depending on where you're at, how much work you've done, and maybe even a good time period post divorce, that this is gonna fall into that grieving process, those 5 steps of grieving in order to get into acceptance of where you're at. But it's critically important to know that and to do these first 2 steps, because then once you get into the action steps that we're going to talk about, you have a grounding and an understanding of what it is and where it is that you want to go. Okay, that's number 2. Number 3 is to identify your feelings about the situation. So again, this is very similar to the first 2 steps, but we're going to be talking internally, right? The first 2, we're talking externally, the situation where you're at. It might be, yes, I am divorced now. Yes, I am a single parent of 2 kids. Yes, I am living in an apartment. Yes, this is the work that I do now. Yes, I only see my kids 50% of the time. And then being accepting of that. So that's all external, right? So now we're talking about internally and identifying what your internal feelings are about that situation. And this runs in correlation or parallel with those first 2 of the external part of it. But this is then really diving in. And this is where the journaling, I love the journaling. The journaling can be really, really effective, even if that's just consciousness of thought journaling when you've got something, an emotion or feeling that's coming up, to be able to identify what your feelings are around that. And you've heard me talk about it in past episodes about how to go through this process of identifying your feelings and step by step. And for those of you who haven't, reference back, there's I do Elaine Dumonceau, and I do a whole podcast episode on journaling and how to effectively journal. So check that one out. It's really, really critical as well. And then just Google journaling, and different people journal in different ways. So whatever is most effective for you. But then the next step after identifying what those feelings are and really getting them down on paper, also, I neglected to say, talk about them, right? This is, again, the opportunity to be able to start formulating, again, internally, the internal part of how you're feeling about that external situation, being able to start to speak about it, share about it, and that helps to refine your thoughts about those feelings. So take the time to talk, and that can be as simple as in one of our group sessions. We've got the semi-monthly free group meetings. We got let's see, I'm recording this on a Friday, so that's going to be tomorrow morning. You're going to be listening to this on a Monday, so that'll have already passed. But check out the website at thedivorcedadvocate.com for all of those meetings as well. So it could be as simple as showing up in one of our meetings, and we get about at least a dozen guys every meeting that comes, and we just talk about these things. We get these things out. We talk about them. We share. We talk back and forth about our shared or our common experiences. And it helps us to formulate, even for me, even to this day, almost 10 years down the road, it helps me to work through some of what I might be going through, because it's an ongoing process. Again, we still have kids. We're going to have them for a while, depending on how old your kiddos are. But then we're also going to be tied to our exes for this duration as well. So it helps me even showing up to these meetings semi-monthly and talking with the guys and sharing my experiences and my feelings as well. So make sure to express those. Make sure to talk those out. Make sure not to self-isolate, get involved in a group, at least a group or some kind of support group. But if you can, get the therapy and coaching as well. So that's number 4. Now we're going to start getting into some more of, basically, this is kind of the steps that I'll work through with clients in private practice as well. And if you've downloaded the Dad's Guide to Divorce, some of these are the steps that we talk about in the Dad's Guide to Divorce. If you don't have it, go to the website and click on Dad's Guide to Divorce, and you can download that for free. And it's just a step-by-step guide. It's the same process that I take my clients through in private practice. But so the next one is going to be identify your needs and get clear on what your intentions are. So Now that you've looked at the external situation, you've accepted that, you kind of identify what your feelings are, and you've been able to learn to express those and talk about those. Now you're going to really get clear on what direction you want this to go. So now you're thinking in terms of what that relational dynamic you want. So you know what the situation is, you know your part in it, you know how your feelings are about it. Maybe not fully, maybe not completely, right? Some of this is evolving, and it's like peeling a layer of an onion. I know a decade later, I'm still peeling things away and going, oh man, this is another thing that I hadn't thought about or hadn't come up, or that I even needing to grieve, which is crazy, right? You'd think after 10 years, there wouldn't be parts that you need to grieve, but that's not in fact true. This all happens at different times in different ways for different people. So just be graceful with yourself about that. There's no finish line with this. Now, some of you might scare you. Don't be scared about it. It's good. It's an evolving thing. It's a positive thing, and it's going to help you grow in your relationship with yourself, with your kiddos also, which is the offshoot of all of this. But then also now when we're trying to train the puppy, right? Retrain our spouses, our exes to learn how to function with what the new person that's evolving and showing up now. So the first part of that is identifying your needs and what it is that you want, and what you want that situation to look like, or what you want that relational dynamic to look like, whatever it might be, and then get clear on the intention that you want to create. So that sounds a little bit ambiguous. Let me try to dial that in for you more specifically. That would be like, that I want to have better communication. So the intention is to have better communication around the kids, and it can be specific to something like that. And let's say that the relational dynamic during your marriage was that you did not have very strong communication, and you hadn't developed communication skills. Actually, this is probably the number one thing that I see, and you've heard Janelle Green on the show before talk about this too, and we've shared about this too. It seems like, and she's phenomenal in dialing this in with any of you that are listening about dialing in the communication or the breakdown in the communication, or building communication skills so that you can do it more effectively. It seems like communication is like the number one thing that is missing. That is the probably primary components to the failure, or the dissolution of the relationship, because there has been so many things that have not been said, or said incorrectly, or that have gone unsaid, etc. So get clear on what your intention is. So the communication, it could be, I want to communicate more clearly about the kids and what we're doing. So, and then the next thing you're going to do is work on any skills that you might need to get better at what that intention is. So working in line with this example here is, all right, perhaps you've identified that during your relationship that you were not as effective of a communicator as you thought you were, right? So, hey, here's the other thing about all this. Some of this is going to show us, and if you're really doing the work and you're paying attention, you're going to see what it was that you brought to the relationship that potentially was something that was that contributed to its demise, right? And that's okay. That's okay, right? This is part of doing something, not doing it well, having it fail, and then learning to do it again. That's just, we don't ever do anything perfect the first time, and hey, okay, you get married once and you expect it to be perfect. No, maybe you can have some grace with yourself and know that if you do want to be open and you do want to take it to heart, that you can figure out that, hey, there were places where I fell down on this and I couldn't have been great. So I know communication for me was definitely one of those as well. And so learning, but here's the other thing is, this isn't something they teach us in school. Depending upon your situation with the parents, the type of parents you had and the upbringing you had, that may not have been taught to you as well. So it's not necessarily your fault. We just don't know what we don't know oftentimes. So for me, that was just not, actually, it was the opposite end of the spectrum. I learned how to communicate very poorly because my parents communicated in a very poor manner in their relationship. So that was the example that I had. So develop that skill. And so if it's a communication thing, learn something like nonviolent communication and the steps to MVC and how you can bring up something in a way that is not threatening, and that is in a way that does exactly what I just talked about in the first half, just talks about what the situation is, how it is, your feelings around it, and then stating what your needs are. So learn those skills, upgrade and work on any of those skills that you need to get better. Notice that we're still internal here, right? We're still working on our stuff. Now we are in that second half part where we're.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Jude with a quick reminder about the Divorced Advocate Foundation for Fathers, which is our nonprofit that helps dads through divorce with legal education, free or reduced cost coaching, and mental health resources. If you own a business or know someone who does, there's an easy way to help by connecting credit card processing through our partner program. Part of the fees go straight to the foundation with no added cost to the business, and 98% of businesses are actually able to save money on their processing fees. It's a win-win. So if you know a business that accepts credit cards, get them in touch with me by sending a warm introduction email to jude@thedivorcedadvocate.com or give me a call directly at 720-255-1021.
Where we're taking action steps, but there are still action steps with us to get better at being able to then, implement these steps. And that's going to be the last one. I'm skipping ahead here, but that's going to be the last one. And then I'll talk about how then you're able to consistently do that. And that's the part where it comes in the retraining, right? The consistency. But before we get there, I don't want to skip too far ahead. So you're working on those skills. The next part is creating an environment that allows the dynamic to change. And so what do I mean by that is, let's stay with this communication example, is maybe communications are difficult and strained face to face. It's very common, right? In a just post-divorce, and when you're working through all of your mental emotional issues and your ex is working through all their mental emotional issues, and seeing them or having to try to communicate about different things just can trigger things. So creating an environment that might mean that you learn to communicate through a platform like Talking Parents or our Family Wizard or something like that. That creates a non-confrontational environment that allows you to effectively communicate and not have to see each other face to face if that's a problem. Some people, that's not going to be a problem. It's not going to be a big deal, but that's just an example of creating the environment that allows you to change that dynamic. So then you can see how that within the communication can shift, because then you're not in front of your ex who might get triggered by who knows what, right? Because we're not in their heads any longer, and we're not working through that any longer, at least to the extent that we have to be in everyday relationship with them. But that removes that situation and creates a positive environment for potentially effectively communicating. So that's number 7. Number 8 then is to master your mindset and focus on your intentions. So, wow, mastering the mindset. I'm not even close to there. I don't know anybody that is 100% there. I think we will have evolved and ascended if we can master our mindset to the point where we're doing it 100% of the times. But if you can focus in on what those intentions are and what you want, and keep your mindset around that. And so what does that look like in the example of communication? Maybe the communication that you are giving, you've learned the nonviolent communication, you've created the environment of communicating through the online platform, and you've composed something that you felt was positive. It's something around communication of the kiddos, and you put that in a format that's NVC, and you send that off, and you get a response that is less than congenial back, right? Something that is potentially would have potentially created a fight or a disagreement or a situation in the past, because again, you've worked through these first 6 steps, and particularly those first 4, and getting clear in the situation, accepting it, and knowing what your feelings are, and then being able to state what your needs are. But the other side has just potentially not done any of that work, right? So they're still working in that old relational dynamic that they are used to doing. And this might be, this has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the fact that is where they're at, and they continue to remain there, and you are moving in a different direction, which is a direction that's a positive for you and for your kiddos. So mastering that mindset around that. So that's a perfect example right there, is if you can keep that mindset and then don't get, back triggered around that, then that can help. And you can do that. Well, there's lots of ways you can do that, but part of that's going to be working with your therapy and your coaching and your group meetings and talking things out, journaling, and, getting to a different place where that what you're doing, you're staying in your lane. What you're doing is positive and is growth oriented and healing oriented, whereas what might be coming back, or what the environment that you're facing is not exactly that. So again, we can only control the one side of this, but in all of that, like when we are doing something, you're going to start to see that there can be a shift, even as slightly. Maybe that is after 5 years, you don't get that vitriol back in an email, right? And I'm speaking from experience on that, right? You might think, holy crap, 5 years just to have that little small baby step, but it's still progress, right? And you're still, if you're doing the work, it's still making a shift, and it's more of making a shift in the environment that is around you and with your kiddos. But that's also going to make them. It's going to make your exes have to move in a direction, because they're no longer eliciting from you the response that they used to. So that's going to force them to move in different ways. And some of them, hopefully, and typically, and usually, is going to be positive. Sometimes, and this happens maybe sometimes in the short term, it can go the other end of the spectrum, right? Where they're so confused, and it's so, it all stems from a place of pain, but they're so filled with pain and difficulty and challenges in their mindset around that they're going to go to the other end of the spectrum, and it may be even more extreme. Maybe it becomes less congenial, and there's more vitriol that's thrown at you, or maybe they start to involve the kids in it and include them, which would be, hopefully they never do. And but you never know. You don't know how they're going to react, and you're not responsible for their reaction, right? You're not responsible for how they're going to respond, what their deal is. You are only responsible for your side of it. So on that, the next note then is going to be, or the next step is going to be then to strategize your actions around that. And so let's talk about this now. I've talked about creating the environment, mastering your mindset, and now you're going to strategize your actions. And so this is then thinking through how it is you want this to work. So with the communication part, you're going to strategize your actions on let's use a specific circumstance in communicating in what you're going to do. And then the next step, obviously, is implementing the actions and staying committed to those. So let's talk to both of those in together, because they are married together, is strategizing the actions. And so with the communication example that I'm using, to to send that message. But then when that message comes back and say that's in a less than positive, you're going to strategize your actions on what it is that you need to do. And perhaps that is something that you need to, I just had a circumstance arise in my life where there was a situation with my daughter. And so she was needing something that she wasn't able to get a transportation situation while she was away from me and not during my parenting time. And I gave her an option and the ability to do something, and communicated that with my ex, which came back, not surprisingly, with a less than positive response. And so, I had to strategize my actions around what it is that I wanted to see as an outcome around this, my intention. So my intention was for, to definitely try to meet the needs of my daughter. And when I say needs, I'm not, or wants of my daughter. This was not a need, like a primal need. It was a want of my daughter, but be able to try to meet that want, but also know that setting a bad precedent for the future in this particular circumstance. And I'm sorry that I got to speak in such vague generalities, but it's a little bit challenging to share some of these examples sometimes when, as you guys know, I'm still litigating and in the middle of court process here as well. But still wanting to be able to meet that want that she had, but also not set a precedent that would be poor. A poor precedent going forward that then would create, go back to that relational dynamic that we had 10 years ago. And so being cognizant of that, I had to strategize my actions. And part of those actions were just staying true to what I had originally intended for, as a resolution to the situation. And once that didn't happen, I just really had to stick to it. And I did even offer an alternative to that was even more conducive to and probably the solution that I should have come up with in the first place, right? So sometimes these things are evolving, and even for me in coaching this stuff all the time, I'm trying to figure this stuff out on the fly sometimes, and it's like, holy crap, why didn't I think of that the first time? That would have been a much more positive outcome and intention for this. But so again, have grace with yourself. It's an ongoing thing. You're learning skills and you're relearning and doing it. Just like the any pro athlete, they're once they make the pros, they don't stop practicing their jump shot or their slap shot or their or any of their different skills. They just continue to hone those as well. So you're never just going to get to be able to just be fantastic at this. Well, hopefully you get to be fantastic at this, and then you can teach everybody else on it. But it's more than likely that you're just going to keep learning and keep evolving over that. So then that was me having to strategize my actions around that, and simply really kind of pivot my actions as well, kind of midstream when I got back what I got back. And then I had to stay committed, just had to stay committed to what it is, because if you don't stay committed to the change that you want to see in that relation, in that relational dynamic, then you're just going to continue to get the same that you had before. And look, there's a reason why we're all now not with that person. And one of those is that the relational dynamic was unhealthy. Doesn't mean all of it was, but there's probably a good portion of it. And those are the things that are going to be the most difficult to change and get to fall away post-divorce, unless we do walk through these 10 steps and make sure that we are retraining the puppy or training. It is really retraining, I guess. So I don't know how you retrain a puppy. So maybe I need to rethink that whole title, because we're retraining an old dog, right? So maybe it's more like that we're retraining, teaching an old dog new tricks. But anyway, so those are the 10 steps to changing the relational dynamic with your ex. And again, this is just kind of cursory, very, very surface level. We go into this in really much more specific detail in some of the classes and workshops. So check that out at the website at thedivorcedadvocate.com. We've got some stuff coming up here in the spring. and jump on one of the group one of the group meetings, the free group meetings. And again, I thank you for being here and listening. I want to also recognize your support, because I was looking at some of the stats here just before getting on, and man, we've had now more than 40,000 downloads of the podcast, which is absolutely phenomenal. We're still ranking up in the top 10% of all podcasts worldwide, which is close to 3 million podcasts. So that is such a blessing. And I'm so grateful for all of your listening, and please continue to share it. We've also been listened to in 97 total countries. That's mind-boggling, right? That divorce is going on in 97 different countries across the world, where there's folks listening, and in 3,254 total cities across the world. And some of the top ones are, you great listeners in Denver and Los Angeles and Sydney and Toronto and Atlanta and Dallas and Brisbane, Queensland, as well. So thank you for listening and supporting the show. Please continue to share it far and wide on social media. Take some time and give us a review. That helps, or a star rating. And let's just keep sharing and supporting each other. Thank you so much. Have a phenomenal week, and God bless.
To hear the rest of this episode and access the corresponding resources, visit thedivorcedadvocate.com and become a member of our community. It's free to join and will provide you with the resources you deserve as a divorced or divorcing dad. Thank you for listening. God bless, and I'll talk with you next week.